So in this session, we want to implement 3 different patterns, right? So 3 different patterns in the same session, and they're very similar to each other. So it makes sense to look at them all together. They're not too different from what we have seen earlier. They are pretty similar, but I think they add a little, like one level of complexity above what we discussed in the last session, right? So the patterns that we want to work on, they are, this is the first pattern, right? The second pattern that I want to work upon looks like this, right? This is the second pattern that we need to work upon. The third pattern that we need to look at looks like this. So before we start writing code, let's talk about these patterns a little, right? Let's talk about these patterns a little. So we need to answer our 3 questions. How many rows, how many columns in the ith row, and what do we need to print, right? So let's answer that. I think for all of these, and these are examples of patterns for n is equals to 4. I hope you understand when n is 3, what's going to happen. So for example, if n is 3, we will only have this much. If n is 3, we will only have this much. And if n is 3 here, we will have this much, right? 3 to 1, 3 to 1, 3 to 1. That's how the patterns will look like for n is equals to 3, right? So let's come back. How many rows in the first pattern? If n is 4, you have 4 rows. If n is 3, you have 3 rows. So you have n rows. How many columns in the ith row? Seems like a square pattern, right? The number of rows and number of columns are equal. So we'll have n columns in ith row. It's actually independent of I. First row has 4 columns, n columns, second row also has n columns, third row also has n columns, and so on. Third, now this is where these patterns are different from what we had seen earlier, right? The structure is exactly same. You need n rows, you need n columns. Now within those, what to print is different, right? In the previous example, we were printing star. We were just printing star. But here, you have to print different things. You can't keep printing 1, you're not printing only 2, you're not printing only 3, you're printing different things. So for example here, in the first row, we always print 1. In the second row, we always print 2. In the third row, we always print 3. In the fourth row, we always print 4. Interesting, right? So seems like in the ith row, we will only print I. First row 1, second row 2, third row 3, ith row I. So in the ith row, we will keep printing I. That's it. That's the only change we need to do to make the previous pattern work for this pattern as well. The previous code work for this pattern as well. So what do we need to print? We need to print I. Right, so exactly same code. Instead of where we were printing star, we just need to print I now. Effectively, what's going to happen for row number 1, I will be 1. So we'll be printing all 1s. For row number 2, we'll be printing all 2s. For row number 3, we'll be printing all 3s. And for row number 4, I will be printing all 4s. That's how it's going to work. Okay. Now, if you look at the second pattern, now this pattern, what's happening is row 1 does not have everything same. Row 1 has changing values. Row 2 has changing values. But if you look at a particular row, let's look at this particular row. In this row, column 1 has 1 in it. Column 2 has 2 in it, column 3 has 3 in it, and column 4 has 4 in it. So seems like what you need to print is the column number. In the first column, you always print 1. In the second column, you always print 2. In the third column, you always print 3. In the fourth column, you always print 4. And we already have the column number with us. So in this is same, this is same. This becomes J. We already have the column number in J with us, right? That's the way we had written our code. So I was the row number, J was the column number. Here we had to print row number, here we had to print the column number. Let's talk about the third pattern a little later. Let's first write code for the first 2 patterns, right? Let's quickly change the code that we had written earlier and let's make it work for the first 2 patterns that we have here. Perfect. Okay, so I'm quickly going to make a copy of this, right? So yes, pattern 2 looks good. Let's paste it again. This time make it pattern 3. Absolutely perfect. So in pattern 2, the only thing that I need to change is basically instead of printing star, I want to print I. So what will happen here? When I is 1, n is let's say 3, I is 1, and j starts from 1. 1 is less than or equal to 3, so you will print I, that is 1. Then j becomes 2, 2 is less than or equal to 3, you will print 1. It becomes 3, 3 is less than or equal to 3, you print another 1, and j becomes 4. 4 is not less than or equal to 3, so you don't print anything and you move to the next line, and I has now increased to 2. So the next time when we are going to go through this loop, we will print 2 now because I value has gone to 2, and that's how you will get this pattern, right? That's how we will get this pattern. Let's quickly run this to make sure this actually works. Perfect. Seems like it works the way we wanted it to work. Okay, in pattern 3, what did we decide? We figured out that what we need to print is the j value, the column number. In ith row, first you need to print 1, then 2, then 3, and then 4. It basically is the column number. So you need to print j here. Not star, not I, you need to print j. Okay, perfect. That's exactly what we wanted, right? That's exactly what we wanted. Seems like we are done with the first two. Now let's worry about this one. Okay, this one is a little more interesting because it's not I, like ith row does not have all same values. It's not j as well because the first row does not have 1, the first column does not have 1, second column does not have 2. But it seems like we should be able to find some formula from this, right? Seems like as j is increasing, j increases, let's say we need to print p, the p value, the print value actually decreases. So j goes up, print value goes down. So my understanding, my feeling is that this p value is inversely proportional, or I can say as j is increasing, this has to decrease. So minus j, some factor of minus j has to be there, right? Okay, so that is one intuition that I have. Secondly, if n is 3, it starts from 3. If n is 4, it starts from 4. If n is 5, it would have started from 5. So seems like it has to be some factor of n as well. So let's try n minus j, if this will work. So if n is 4 and j is 1, what will happen? N minus j will be 3. That means it would start from 3 and not from 4. So there is a gap of 1. If j is 2, n minus j will be 2, but we want it to be 3. We don't want it to be 2, we want it to be 3. There is a gap of 1. So let's try this, n minus j plus 1. In the first column, 4 minus 1 plus 1 will become 4. In the second column, 4 minus 2 plus 1 will become 3. In the third column, 4 minus 3 plus 1 will become 2. In the last column, 4 minus 4 plus 1 will become 1. Seems like this will work absolutely fine, right? It's not very complicated. You just have to think, you just have to put your mind to the right place and just figure out what is the right value which needs to be printed. And that's the only difference in this pattern as well. We have 4 rows, we have 4 columns. So n rows and n columns, and what we need to print is n minus j plus 1. Perfect. So let's quickly paste it again. Let's create pattern 4, and in pattern 4 the only change we need to do is instead of star we need to print n minus j plus 1. See, all these patterns we didn't have to change anything else because they had the same structure. They were all square patterns, n rows, n columns, so the basic loops were staying the same. Only thing that was changing is what we had to print, right? So that's what we need to do here. Let's quickly run this. That's exactly what we wanted, and it'll work absolutely fine for rest of values of n as well. Okay, so perfect. So seems like we are making good progress. We are moving ahead with a little more interesting patterns, and we will work on a lot more interesting patterns as we keep making progress into this lecture. Okay, but it's very important that you complete your practice work as well. So you have some practice problems right after this session as well, so please work on them. Okay, thank you.